To ask any further questions. Number one, thank you to all of you, congregations, clergy, and spouses, for accepting the appointments that have been made on your behalf. We are grateful for the opportunities that our itinerant system provides to make sure that all churches have a pastor and that clergy have appointments that match their gifts and graces. And I trust that God will be at work among all of you to let those gifts and graces be shown and used for the sake of Jesus Christ. So thank you. Secondly, a reminder that every pastor is appointed not only to a church or charge, but also to a circuit and also to a community. So it is expected that pastors will be involved in circuit ministries and in the community as well as just in your local church. And staff parish relations committees can encourage that and allow their pastor to talk about how those ministries are going and how the congregation might be involved in circuit and community as well. Circuit ministry is sometimes, we talked about all the things that are changing when we move into a new appointment, and sometimes the last thing we think about is the circuit. My encouragement to pastors who are moving is to get connected with the circuit leader in your circuit right away in July sometime. Find out when the meetings take place that clergy gather for, when the meetings are that laity gather for, what events are coming up in the near future in the circuit that you will need to get on your calendar. So make that your responsibility. I think a lot of circuit leaders are sensitive to that and are reaching out to the new pastors in the circuit, but I think those who are moving in need to take that responsibility too. Next, I want to remind you that all pastors have been appointed with missional reasons for that appointment. Things that those pastors are going to help the congregations work on and move toward in their new appointment. Those missional reasons will be printed out for you on your appointment letter that goes both to the clergy person and to the staff parish relations committee. And so we're encouraging you to study those missional reasons for the appointment, both clergy and staff parish relations committee. Study those, make sure you understand what they're talking about, and go through them as often as you can. Remember that your staff parish committee is to meet with your new pastor every month for at least the first 6 months of your new appointment. Some churches find that it's good to meet every month all the time. It's better to have a monthly meeting that only lasts a half hour because we don't have a lot of stuff to talk about than it is to wait 3 months and find out there were 13 issues that came up over the 3-month period that should have been dealt with 3 months ago. So keep the communication lines open and use your SPRC meetings for that. A reminder that the welcoming of the new pastor on Sunday, July 8th, which is the first Sunday that the new pastor will preach, is the responsibility of the staff parish committee to at least make sure it happens. Others in the church might help you with some kind of welcoming celebration, but it is the responsibility of the staff parish relations committee to make sure that some sort of welcoming celebration happens on that day in some way. And you probably already know this, but the last Sunday for outgoing pastors is June 24th, and July 1st is the sabbatical Sunday for the move, which helps the pastor have a little space for the move, but it also helps the congregations have a little emotional space. It sometimes is very emotional to say goodbye to one pastor, and it ought to be emotional to say hello to a new pastor as well. So that gives just a little break for us to come away from one of those sets of feelings and be able to move well into the next set. Sure.
On that day, what do you recommend in terms of communion? And you only have
that was my next point, thank you. On the sabbatical Sunday, July 1st, it is the responsibility of the Staff Parish Relations Committee to find pulpit supply. And you may want to make alternate arrangements for Holy Communion if you usually are a church that serves communion on the first Sunday of the month. You could have communion on that Sunday if you are having a retired clergy person that is preaching that Sunday, but it might also work to have communion on the second Sunday of the month and to serve that sacrament, to think about being at table with your new pastor on the second Sunday of the month. So talk about that in your staff parish committee. You might want to take a recommendation to your worship committee or your church council or something to think through that, and certainly talk with your new pastor about what their preference would be in that. Next, I am encouraging all the staff parish relations committee chairs to put in a call to your DS toward the end of July or early August, after the move has taken place and things are at least beginning to get settled, and just to let us know how the arrival of the new pastor went, and if there are any loose ends that haven't been tied or things that you need clarification about, that there's a little discomfort with or question about. If you put it on your calendar as staff parish committee to call me or whoever your DS is after that first month is done, it might help you to be able to get some answers, or to let us know that everything's going just great. We like to hear that as well. Let's see, I already said about meeting monthly every for the first 6 months at least. Make sure you check in on the missional reasons for the appointment, the missional needs that the congregation has. And another thing to check in with your pastor on in those first 6 months is your pastor's self-care practices. Make sure that your pastor is taking a Sabbath every week. Make sure your pastor is getting a day off. Make sure that your pastor is spending time with their family. Ask them how their family, or if they're a single pastor, how their relationship with their close friends are. Are they finding enough time to get out of town to go visit their best friend or whatever? It's your responsibility to hold them accountable for caring for themselves. It's a two-way street. Pastors have responsibility, but you can assist them and uphold them in that endeavor. Then I wanted to let you know that after about the first 6 months of your new appointment, probably in the beginning of January, all new pastors will get an email from the cabinet asking you to just do some reflecting on your first 6 months in your new appointment, to let us know what's going well, what you're moving toward now, what things might have been helpful that you weren't aware of before you came. So we just like to check in with everybody, all the new pastors, after about 6 months. So watch for that email. And for those of you who are really a little more detail-oriented, you might put it in your calendar and make some notes along the way so that you can write that easily. I want to also encourage, Mark kind of said this before, but I want to encourage outgoing pastors and SPRCs who are receiving new pastors to speak the name of your new pastor sweetly, to find all the opportunities that you can to tell your congregation what you are looking forward to with this new pastor. Speak about what that pastor's gifts and graces for ministry are. Tell people what you're looking forward to and what you know the new pastor is looking forward to. You can help build relationships for that person before they even arrive, and it's a real blessing when someone does that on your behalf. You also are responsible for encouraging your congregation to encourage the relationship with the new pastor. Certainly there's anxiety because people who weren't on the SPRC haven't even seen this person. Hopefully you'll have a time to see this person, either helping your current pastor to lead worship or at a ad council meeting or something in the transition between now and July. But a lot of people in the congregation don't have the opportunity to see the new pastor until the first Sunday. So do all you can to encourage those people to get to know the pastor, to look forward to the opportunities that God is providing, and to recognize that this wilderness time of transition will soon be over because the new person will be here and you'll be able to move forward in ministry then. And then I want to encourage laity to make sure that you and your congregation are aware of what your church's plan for ministry is, and to pay attention to that. Remember that your pastor is appointed to help you move into the plan for ministry that your church already has. I do agree with Mark that if you don't have a plan for ministry, now is not the time to hurry up and whip one together so that you can hand it to the new pastor. But if you've been doing what we've been asking for the last 4 years or so, you should have your 4-year ministry plan in place, and you all will be knowing what you're expecting your pastor to help with, and you can get your pastor on board with that. So pay attention to what the state of your ministry plan is so that you can help keep the momentum going in your church rather than waiting for the new pastor to create some momentum. We are the body of Christ. It's not the pastor's church, it's the people's church, and we all are in ministry together. Are there questions now? Kevin?
And could I say a few words on behalf of the Board of Board Ministry?
Sure.
Who's on now?
Sure.
For those of you that don't know, my name is Kevin Rice-Myers, and I am on the conference staff as the Executive Secretary of the Board of Ordained Ministry. And our responsibility with the board is primarily credentialing, but we have some other responsibilities as well. In the United Methodist Church, you experience your pastors as your pastor. You may not realize that we have different cubbyholes that we put pastors into, for lack of a better word, different categories of conference relationship. One of those categories of conference relationship is what we call a provisional member of the annual conference. And that is a person who is in the process moving towards ordination, but has not yet reached the point of actually being ordained. They are licensed for ministry in the charge where they're appointed, and they are allowed to do all of the functions of ministry that any other pastor is allowed to do in that charge. But they also have a relationship with the Board of Ordained Ministry that places some expectations on a portion of their time. A provisional member of the annual conference is required to participate in what we call the provisional residency program. And that means that they are expected to meet with a provisional mentoring group, probably on a monthly basis, with other provisional members that are in their area of the state. They're also expected to participate in 3 provisional residency retreats or seminars every year, one in the summer, one in the fall, and one in the spring. And that is a part of their work. It's a part of their appointment responsibility. It's a required expectation on the part of the Board of Ordained Ministry, and it's a part of their process moving towards ordination. So if the pastor that has been appointed to your congregation is a provisional member of the annual conference, you need to be aware of that and help to interpret that to the congregation, because there will be some times when they have to be away from the congregation in order to fulfill that responsibility. The other thing I would say is that if your pastor is what we call a licensed local pastor, that means that they are licensed for ministry. They have a different educational path to ministry than someone who has been ordained. There are some expectations for licensed local pastors as well. They are required to participate in what is known as a course of study, which means that they have to take at least 2 classes if they're a part-time local pastor, or 4 classes if they're a full-time local pastor in a year. And that's a part of their work expectation as well. It's not vacation time when they take the time to go to their coursework. And you need to be aware of that as well. And the other thing I would say is that there is no greater or lesser value to any of these particular categories of conference relationship. They are different paths into ministry in the United Methodist Church that are equally valuable. And you will find that the pastors that are appointed, regardless of their relationship with the conference, will love you and will care for you and will be good pastors for you. Their path into ministry may be slightly different. There may be some different expectations because of the path that they're taking, but that is part of our system as United Methodists. And I just want you to be aware of that. And if you have any questions about that, you can feel free to call me. My contact information is on the conference website, and it's in the conference journal, and if your pastor is a provisional member or a licensed local pastor, they know how to get in touch with me. And we'd be glad to talk with any of you about what that means and the implications of that for your congregation.
Thanks, Kevin. That also reminded me that you might inquire of your new pastor what conference responsibilities they hold. You know, they might be on a conference board or agency, they might be a clergy mentor or a candidacy mentor. Usually if they're moving to a different district, district, the mentoring relationships would be changed so that someone in the candidate's district would be their mentor. But ask your new clergy what conference responsibilities they hold so that you can help interpret that time away to your congregation, because that also is part of their appointment. Questions? No?
In a previous move, I had a situation where I didn't move from the community for about 10 days after my last Sunday. And, but officially when I walked out the door on my last Sunday, I was finished as their pastor, but someone died that week. And I wondered if you could kind of clarify for people, because although I went and called on the person as they were dying, they did have to make other arrangements for the funeral. If you could just kind of help people understand that even though we start July 1st, we kind of are done as of that Sunday.
Yeah, the appointment goes through June 30th, and some pastors might be even moving a few days before that, depending on how the move works. So staff parish committee needs to make sure, and outgoing pastors, that there is pastoral care coverage provided in your congregation between the time the outgoing pastor goes and when the new pastor arrives. And again, to reiterate what was said earlier, the outgoing pastor should not come back to do, may not go back to do any funerals, because it is the new pastor's responsibility. So make sure you do have that pastoral care coverage for the bridge, and that congregation members know that they should either call the church office if they have a need, or that there's some phone number available for them to reach. Perhaps a retired clergy will be covering, perhaps another clergy in a neighboring community, United Methodist, will be covering, but make sure people know what that is in case that situation arises. Because it can be really traumatic for a family if someone is dying and no one knows who to call.